Here's to the bold visionaries, faithful disruptors who make God the goal. While some may call them crazy, we see a call to create. God has empowered us to take righteous risk, solving the world's greatest problems, under His power, for His glory. Welcome to the Faith-Driven Entrepreneur Podcast.
So we have a strict rule in podcasts and video shoots, and I don't know if we've ever let this out. This isn't like that groundbreaking, but But one of the things I hate on video shoots I hate plants. I hate plants. I don't know what it is. They show up in the background.
Yeah.
Our video team kind of has this bit where they'll like try to work plants in the shots. But I've been assured that this is a plant-free podcast. Like
good to know.
There's no plants happening in the background.
You know, AI can add plants though so easily.
This is true. This is true. You never know. Just when I think I've defeated plants from being in the backdrop, they're going to make a resurgence through AI.
This is a good just future prank opportunity of
it is. I mean, I love Hobby Lobby frames. It's just the plant section that I just stay away from. There's like some phobia. I don't know.
Yeah. So did that turn you off if you went to a church and you saw some plants on stage too? Does that?
Good thing. Like, should we have candles instead of plants? I don't know. You got to know your demographics. I'm not one to base off of.
Plants are a very Baptist thing, I feel like.
Okay, so the equivalent of like maybe my phobia with plants in a backdrop.
Yep.
I think is what entrepreneurs are with social media. I'm not going to go so far as to say entrepreneurs hate social media.
Yes.
But there's a love-hate relationship.
Yes.
Why is that? Why do entrepreneurs hate social media?
I think they hate social media for two reasons. I think there's two tension points of social media. One is it's a time waster, and two, it's a this is a good question. It's a time waster, and it's where did my train of thought there? It's the pride element of I don't want to put myself. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to make it about me. Nobody cares what I ate for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I think but it's a healthy tension, and both are true. You know. But at the end of the day, when we think about the majority of the world spends 2 hours a day on social media, and so if we just reverse engineer into our objectives, getting people's attention has always been the biggest marketing challenge for any organization or entrepreneur. And so there's an opportunity now that doesn't cost us anything but our time and energy to get people's attention to bring them to our objectives. And so foundationally, whatever your objective is, that's where social media has created a unique opportunity for every business, because most businesses couldn't afford TV or radio ads historically. And now we all can enter into the social media space, whether we have the financial resources to run ads or just the organic opportunity to post content.
I love something you said there at the beginning there that I just want to come back to before we roll into some other thoughts, is that tension of not making more yourself. Like there is this tension.
Yep.
And so like, as we're on this journey building Right Now Media and Faith Driven too, we really try to say, okay, how do you create a platform to spotlight others? So when, Henry's out there filming selfie videos, it's really because he's wanting to highlight the person next to him.
Yep.
When we think about the content in the podcast, it's always about like, how can we highlight what God is doing through this wide, diverse movement of people that are speaking? But in the social media rules, that is an uphill battle.
Yes.
Everybody loves the personality-centric thing.
Yep.
That tension you just talked about,
yes,
it's a real tension, not just in our hearts,
yes,
of making more of ourselves and that false pride, humility, inner battle of ambition that always is raging. But we're also kind of fighting against the algorithm if we don't kind of surrender to that, right?
Yes. And I think at the end of the day, people connect to people more than they connect to an organization. And this is where you see Elon Musk doesn't have to pay for marketing because he has so much audience through social media. And I think when we think about even Apple, Steve Jobs wasn't necessarily on social media, but he had so much organic attention by how he just, presented Apple's brand online. And so I think it's similar to where we don't have to, we see the entrepreneurs posting pictures of Lamborghinis and things like that, but that's really not that attractive to a lot of people. I think at the end of the day, it's more, we now have a microphone to transparently share with our customers and potential customers what we're about and, what problems we solve. And so social media just bridges, I think, a gap of directly communicating with customers that we haven't been able to before. And so I think that's this unique opportunity, but I think we have to manage the tension of making it all about ourselves and just bragging on ourselves or our companies all the time. And so I think it's a tension to manage, but I think it's an opportunity that can't be denied when it comes to the impact it can have on our businesses and with our objectives.
Do you think there's a point here? I mean, years ago, it was all about polished veneer and just kind of presenting this like idyllic kind of background and serene thing. But then something switched and people were saying, hey, authenticity is great. Mm-hmm. Do we ever go a notch further and humility becomes kind of a thing that like people are clicking through? And that's a weird thing. It just, it sounds so countercultural to like social media feeds right now.
Yes.
But like, is there a place where that humility can kind of jump into there?
Yeah. And I think humility sometimes isn't about saying nothing. Sometimes humility is talking about others more than you talk about yourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes humility is helping others before you help yourself. And so I think it's a great practice when we are present on social media is one, what's at the core of our hearts, but two, what's at the core of the message we're communicating and what are people hearing when they listen to us? And this is where I think one of the other opportunities of social media is not necessarily what you're saying on social media. It's what people are saying about you on social media. You have an opportunity to look in the mirror through social media, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
There's that opportunity for people to talk about you, talk about your brand, talk about your work. And it's a great feedback loop that we often, it's one of the reasons people don't like social media. They don't like what people are saying about them, but sometimes that says more about them than I think we want to really accept. And I think there's plenty of hurtful things. What people will say behind a screen is dark at times, but I think it's part of the powerful opportunity of social media is this two-way communication where broadcast media allowed us to push out messages, never have to listen to feedback. But now, whether we want to or not, people are talking about us when we're online.
It's part of the agreement you enter into, right? Is like once you step into that space, it's a two-way method of communication.
Yes.
That even maybe it's comments or it's not comments. It's not getting the likes, and there's the whole social or what that does to us kind of element side of things. It's fascinating thinking about that because I think some of the best stories of this movement, when I think over the last 20 years of capturing stories, like they're the ones that didn't want to be told.
Yeah.
But they came to a rightful place where they said, you know what? For the sake of a movement, for the sake of this, I want to share what God has done through a team or through a group. And I feel that I need to, but the tone never changed.
Right.
I think one of the first times, like being introduced to David Green, like the first time that we had conversations about capturing a story when we were with Right Now Media, there was hesitancy. And there was this like, hey, I'm not so sure. And I loved that. I still to this day very much appreciate that about the humility that the family carries of saying like, hey, we're going to do this if it's for the right reason, for a cause. And I think that it's not a lost art, but it's something we've got to stay closely connected to.
Yes. I think this is where sometimes it's about what we say and how we say it that people will perceive. And I think people don't like people that brag about themselves a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so I think there's opportunities for us to weave in our message, but there's also opportunities for us to highlight others and to highlight God and to talk about things that we're passionate about. And so social media gives us a platform to talk about all kinds of things. And I think it's how we approach that microphone. But I think it also goes back to that conversational side of social media is social. And so often we should spend at least half our time, if not more than half our time, just replying to other people's posts, just commenting on other people's content, just encouraging them. And so part of the power of social media, and it's one of the things I love about how you use social media, is majority of your content is just highlighting what other people are doing and what the God's work around the world through entrepreneurs and investors all over the world. And so I think so often what we need to do is talk less about ourselves, but sometimes it's even talk less on our own platforms and talk more on others to lift up those conversations. And so social media is very social when done well. We treat it like a microphone, but that's only one part of social media.
I want to come back to that, but I want to pull back for a moment here. There's fun God journeys in everybody's story. There's kind of like two in particular for me that where our paths connected, but I kind of want to take back and kind of really walk through kind of your journey. So tell everybody kind of your story. How did you go from not even being aware of it to talking about it to helping others with social media.
Yeah. So I say my journey into social media started in 1999. I was a youth pastor. I was 19 years old. And
we're talking like AOL Instant Messenger. Is this what I'm hearing in the background?
That's exactly what you're hearing. So this 7th grade girl asked me at my first youth group I was leading. She said, "What's your aim?" I said, "My aim is to reach every teenager in Baytown, Texas." She said, "No, what's your aim?" No. And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "AOL Instant Messenger. You get on the World Wide Web, and that's where me and all my friends are." Mm-hmm. And that night I got on, started chatting with this girl, and she introduced me to her friends, and there was another high school boy in our youth group, and I connected with him and his friends. Next day I had we had 2 kids at that first youth group, by the way.
Yeah.
Connected with both of them on AIM. Next day I had a 15-passenger bus full of kids going bowling because I connected with them on AIM.
No.
And it was a digital ministry, turned in-person ministry. And that summer I saw a dozen kids accept Christ in a chat room on AIM. I had no digital ministry strategy. I had no plan. I didn't even know what AIM was.
Yeah.
But I went to where the teenagers said they were, and I used it to do ministry. And then I saw another 20 kids accept Christ in our youth group, all fueled by this digital technology. So fast forward a little bit, a few years, I graduated college. Economy was down in 2002. And I remember having a conversation with my dad. I'd gotten a business degree. And he said, "Why don't you do the youth ministry thing for a couple of years, and then you can get a grown-up job later?" And I just never got a grown-up job.
Yeah.
I did youth ministry, and it was MySpace. And so I kind of pioneered, I was like, that's where the teenagers are. I'll use this. AIM worked well. And then Facebook came along. First week, Facebook had ads available. I ran $20 in ads for our college ministry that had about 25 college students at the time. That $20 translated to 50 students at our college group the next week.
Wow.
Because we could target college students in San Antonio with our Bible study. And I was like, I think we should do more of this.
Yeah.
And that led to me getting to do some consulting with other businesses in San Antonio. They're like, "You seem to know how this Facebook thing works." And it also led to me coming on staff at Community Bible Church, where we connected to be their social media pastor and lean into this new website. At that point was facebook.com, and start onlinechurch.com, and kind of pioneer that space. And that led to getting to write a book called Social Media Guide for Ministry. It got to lead to me. My first ministry client was a guy named Nick Vujicic, who's here in this building. And he had 20,000 Facebook followers. He's like, "What do I do with this? Can you do it for me?" He's like, "I don't have hands and feet. I can't do social media." And he's like, "Can you run my Facebook page for me?" And I was like, "Yes, but I think you should also look at this YouTube platform." And we just started putting content on Facebook, and we went from basically 20,000 to about 11 million in the next 2 years on his Facebook page, and really growing his YouTube channel. And so it ended up leading to me starting a social media marketing agency to help ministries utilize social media, and some small businesses and nonprofits, and maximizing social media to accomplish their ministry goals. And so that was kind of my journey from 19 years old, learning about AIM, to kind of accidental entrepreneurship into helping ministries and organizations utilize social media to accomplish their goals.
I love that. I love so much of that kingdom perspective. Is, again, we think about entrepreneurship, there's always some funding, some products, some exits, and that. But I think we've underestimated, and I think the lives that both of us have walked is like this kingdom entrepreneurship inside of ministries and nonprofits. Sure, the tax regulation might be different, but the mindset is very much the same. And I love that bootstrapping nature of like, okay, it starts with Instant Messenger, and you just kind of build to it. What's fun for me is God's intersected our paths twice in distinctive ways. One, here we are with Right Now Media, which this Netflix of video curriculum and studies, and we're still struggling how to communicate this message. And we'd sit there and talk about, hey, your families have cell phones, they're streaming stuff, and the pastors still didn't get it. And we're like, well, how could we show this story? And I'll never forget, I think it was a Monday morning, coming back in, and somebody sends me this video from a church in San Antonio that says, "Hey, we just resourced all of our families like it's Christmas. And the stage announcement, the way you guys did it, and the way that you guys had a vision for democratizing access to it struck me." And it was like, man, there's just this connection of okay, somebody, hundreds of miles away is seeing our confusion being thought out loud and helping kind of bridge that. And that's essentially what you've become so great at, is taking somebody's idea and a dream and trying to bridge that. And it's fun seeing that.
Well, and I'll add to that story of how you were solving a problem for us, because we were a mega church in San Antonio that we had 10 multi-site campuses. We had this school, like a church resource center, where we'd have DVDs that we give out to all the small group leaders. It was getting so crazy complex for us to manage that DVD sharing system.
Late fees? Did you charge late fees as a church? No,
we did not. But
theological
we did have,
position on late fees. No,
I could tell you, we had the perfect Miss Jones was her name, who would follow up with you, and you would rather pay a late fee than hear from Miss Jones.
Okay,
and so the DVD system worked good enough to where we were, but then we had gone online with our church, and we started having people. We were having people from 100 different countries attending our church online, and we were trying to figure out, how do we provide the same level of care and support, discipleship to everyone in our congregation? And so where's my job to figure out in this online church world that we were still struggling with theologically, even how does this work, but practically, how does this work? And then I find Right Now Media, and it's like, this solves this problem that we have, but not just for our online community, but for our local community. We ended up going buying a Roku, putting it in every classroom in our church, and it transformed our church in a lot of ways. And that's what my pastor, so is my opportunity to lead up to where I showed it to our senior pastor, and he was like, I got to tell the whole church about this. So the next Sunday, he does a whole sermon all about it to integrate this new resource into the life of our church.
I'm still waiting for that thank you card. We bought tens of thousands of Rokus over the years, trying to help churches do that. Roku sticks and all that stuff.
Yes.
Fun memories. So another fun memory is we're both at this conference that many people might be familiar with, called Lausanne. Every 10, 15 years or so, it happens, and it's a global gathering of different, really 200 plus different countries, leaders coming together to say, hey, what does the both opportunity and the challenge of the moment look like? And I mean, I remember just kind of being in this moment as, an entrepreneur here, kind of saying, gosh, this social media stuff is crazy. And I God, like, please give us somebody to help us figure this out. 60 seconds later, I flip around, there you are. And it has been so fun to reconnect. And now it's fun to lock shields and lock arms on the same team to think about this. And so as you think about, this next chapter and how do we reach entrepreneurs, what gets you excited? And what do you think some of the challenges are, not for us as an organization, but maybe for the movement, and saying, okay, how do we get this message out further?
To add on to the story too of us, our reconnecting at Lausanne is just minutes before you and I reconnected. I connected with a gentleman who we were in the Digital Discovery Center, a gentleman from Kenya who was sharing with me. He's an entrepreneur, had started a school that has 10,000 students in his school to teach entrepreneurship to children growing up in Kenya. That he said, we have lots of the evangelical Christian movement is growing here, but we have tangible needs that we need to train up entrepreneurs within the church. And I was so inspired by his story. And then just after that, you and I reconnected, and I was like, man, I remember thinking, I want to help this guy and so many others do more of that. And you were sharing with me all that you've been working on. And, I think practically there's a lot of levels to how do we better bring this message and these opportunities to more people? And I think there's some practical ways that we're going to do that through social media as people are connected online, all over the world. I think I learned at Lausanne that the average engagement time for anyone in the world is about 2 hours and 10 minutes a day on the internet. And it depends on what country you're in, what region you're in. But it's, I say that, no, 2 hours and 10 minutes a day on social media. It's about 8 hours a day on the internet.
Which in itself is just staggering. We're talking about global averages. We're not talking about just U.S. Western
U.S.
average.
is about 8.5 hours. And so I think it's 8 hours, 10 minutes on average. So the U.S. isn't even that far, further. And it's not even about who has the highest speed internet either. One of the lowest is actually Japan. I was surprised to learn. And so there's just some different cultural things. But I think as I think about opportunities, I think the fact that the world is now connected through the internet and that opportunity is getting broader and broader, faster and faster. The other is, I think, language translation, is becoming more and more accessible. But I do think it's that global aspect of not just language translation, but cultural translation. And so as we continue, and this one of the things that's blown me away as I've gotten started, is just seeing how much engagement we're already seeing globally, how much hunger there is for this message and these resources in the community globally. And so really creating that integration is exciting, but it's also complicated.
Yeah.
And so I think navigating that complexity very intentionally is going to be both, probably the most fruitful aspects of what we do, but also one of the more challenging opportunities, because it's not, there's not really a model for how to do this.
Yeah.
I think we're having to solve this problem, uniquely as we go.
I think something you hit on is so very encouraging and true about this movement is when we're doing Right Now Media, we would see the data and we see the numbers that very few times people like in the West would be watching something from a pastor or leader in the East.
Yes.
This movement has bucked that trend. And now all of a sudden you can see the most impactful, probably the most viewed stories for American entrepreneurs are actually people overseas.
Yes.
And it's this fascinating thing for one of the few times in the church that I've been around content that you're seeing a two-way street and exchange of ideas at such a rapid pace.
Yes.
Because, in the shadows of COVID and everything moving online to 138 countries doing groups and 190 countries streaming through the podcast, we've kind of like sat back and been like, wow, that was fast.
Yes.
I think you hit on one of the challenges that's so key for this. I think it's a challenge that we're facing as a church.
Yeah.
Is this like aim for everybody, kind of miss everybody feel? And what when you talk to, John Irwin talking about a film, he has a very detailed audience of like who he's aiming for. I'm aiming for, a dad and their son and middle of America watching this film, and you can really get nuanced on that. And we face that challenge, I think, in the church on Sunday morning. That now the how question, like we can agree on the why. But if we talk even about in the faith and work conversation, getting to the how is different for an entrepreneur than it is for somebody else. And I think that that's also a challenge for us on social, because the person that we might reach, with that one message on LinkedIn is different from Nairobi to Dallas to anywhere in between. How do we walk through that just challenge that we're in for that micro targeting?
And I think some of this is understanding that so many of our different messages are not going to be for everyone. Some are going to impact different people in different ways, which is why we've got to have a diversity. If we had one message that impacted everyone, we would need a second message. We need multiple messages to impact different people in different ways, and sometimes to impact people further down their pathway. And I think there's going to be those. And this is where I think you have been and you've led, I think, an organization that tells great stories, because I think at the core of who we are and what speaks to our lives are stories. And so when we, here in America, hear a story of what's happening in Singapore, or we hear a story of what's happening in Nigeria, we get inspired by that, and simultaneously, inspiration can come both ways. And so I think that it is there's just an intersection that is already being formed here of learning that isn't just one way to another. It's just like social media, it's that back and forth aspect of how this engagement is happening, and I think that comes from intentionality. But it's also going to be messy, and I think we know that, and we're learning that it's this not a clear line of solving, some of these objectives and the vision, that God's given you and Henry and leadership at Faith Driven. But there's, I think there's some unique opportunities and challenges that we're going to have to just take a step at a time and figure that out and unlock that. But cultural context, though, is so significant when you think about global engagement.
I think there's something that we've talked about this together is, again, just incredible work from Alex and Tyler and J-Lo and just others that, yes, that's a name, J-Lo. He's part of our team, not the other J-Lo. That's a fun nugget to throw in there on a podcast. But the stories that they tell are just incredible stories. And I would argue, and I put it toe to toe with anybody on a Friday night or a Saturday, if you're showing something like that, the redemptive potential, the highs and the lows of people's journey, it's real. And it's engaging and high quality stuff. The challenge we have, I feel like at some level right now is like, how do you win the 12 and 60-second version of that? Because you can win the 12 to 15 minute when somebody is kind of at that. And I say win, like you can win the hearts and minds of people changing, but how do you win that 12 and 60? So the question I'd have is like, what does it look for us and anybody to tell 12 and 60-second stories? What's a good 12 and 60-second story?
even before I speak to the 12 and 60-second story, I think one of the greatest case studies in digital media is Mr. Beast. If you followed Mr. Beast, he now has over 300 million followers on his YouTube channel. And at the end of the day, his content, which is definitely niched, like it's targeting my kids, not me.
Yeah.
But he's building a global audience, and he's crossing, I think culturally some of these boundaries. But one of the things that I've learned from just studying Mr. Beast is he obsesses over those seconds. And one of the things I hear him say is, he is obsessed over the first 20 seconds of the video, because he knows if he can get you past 20 seconds, you're likely to get to the 2-minute mark. And if you get to the 2-minute mark, you're likely going to get to the 10-minute mark. And so he's analyzing that micro data. He used to, at the end of his videos, have an end screen where you could click to subscribe, but he found by just trimming out that last 8 seconds in a video, he gets a lot better engagement because
people auto-playing to the next one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's just, I think some of that, like, how do we really pay attention to some of these data points that are available to us? And so for us, it's going to be looking at how do we take these messages and so consolidate what's often communicated in 20 minutes into 2 minutes. And understanding a lot of that is the user behavior as we've moved, to our phones significantly. The average people love to hate TikTok. And by the time somebody's listening to this, TikTok might not even be around here in America. But
hey, MySpace could buy it out, can make a big comeback. You never know.
MySpace could be making a comeback. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what's happened with TikTok is that medium is being brought into everything. That medium of consumption from YouTube with YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, X now has a video feed, and so we have this new basically medium of media engagement. And so I think we have to learn how to tell stories through video. And I think this is every organization, every entity. If you want to get people's attention now, the average TikTok user in America is spending over an hour a day on the platform. And that's pretty, those stats cross over to pretty much every region that has TikTok. And so they have captured people's attention a lot through their algorithms, but a lot even through that medium. And so I think it's just learning how to tell stories in a consolidated way. And you have people like Mr. Beast. Now, he's best known for his longer form content.
Sure.
But you've got creators that are learning. And I think it's one of the formats that we're going to need to learn how to develop of how do we better articulate our message in a way that captures people's attention and creates shareability.
Yeah.
And so one of the most important aspects of social media is our inboxes of where people share content to us. So we trust our friends more than we trust algorithms.
Yeah.
And so when you create content that people are sharing with their friends, that's how you really get virality. And so I think that's what we are going to work to unlock. And I think every leader needs to pay attention to with their content.
I mean, I love that when we talk about all these platforms flippantly, but really what you kind of said earlier is just it's the same game.
Yes.
It's the same idea.
Yeah.
It's just that where we're going to meet people are different.
Yes.
I mean, I break down like what we were talking about here is just, email became about the subject line.
Yes.
You could have whatever you want in the body.
Yeah.
But like the subject line had to engage you enough to open it. And so now you saw people that, I mean, their job was thinking about compelling subject lines in crazy ways and provoking ways that can draw people in.
Yes. And
in the same way, now we're set with this idea of the first 20 seconds.
Yes.
And what we have to recognize is like, is it about the method? Is it about the message? And part of that is because like when you look at video and you're trying to tell something beautiful and artistic, well, beautiful and artistic takes time to unpack.
Yes.
And really what we were talking about in those first 20 seconds, I could tell you the voiceover that you're hearing is incredible.
Yes.
Everything could be like this great like challenge and villain being left out for you. But if I can't hear it, and if I can't see any words on screen, I've lost the ability to engage somebody. And so it challenges us in some ways that those first 20 seconds might be a little bit more different, a little bit more not pretty and Bowen and a nice, but it's what's needed at some levels to stop people.
Yes. And we call it the hook, in marketing of how do we capture somebody's attention so that they'll watch to the end. And what Mr. Beast will often say is like, and I think he's a great person to watch, drives my wife crazy because we watch a lot of Mr. Beast and Ross. And he'll say something like, in this video, you're going to see 12 robots come and take over this, whatever. But he gives you basically what to expect, that creates anticipation and curiosity. And then he basically gives you a promise of like, if you watch this,
here's the payoff.
This is going to be the payoff that you're like, I got to see what happens when this railroad comes off the tracks and robots take over. And so whatever it is he's doing, but at the end of the day, then, so he's got your attention. You're probably going to watch that video, but if that video doesn't live up to the promise, you're not going to watch another one of his videos. So you have to, our goal is not to get somebody's attention for 60 seconds. We're not going to change anybody's life through 60 seconds, but we're going to get their attention. And so we got to first get their attention for 20 seconds, and then we get it for 60 seconds, and then we get it again. And so I think we have to, as we think about just content we generate, is we've got to be thoughtful and intentional of how we capture people's attention, but also we've got to live up to the promise that we communicate when we get their attention. And then we've got to keep, bringing value to them in the relationship.
I think there's so much about it. Like sometimes it's that, I mean, we had a little fun thing that there was this, we did this clip, Dear Entrepreneur. It got some great traction. We did an equivalent of Dear Investor, and the guys had exported a version of it, and there was no sound on the first 6-7 seconds. And I just told him, I said, leave it. I just want to see what happens. Yeah. And what was fascinating for me is like, and it was a little bit more of a somber message, I guess, if you will, but amount of people that said, hey, like there's no audio.
Yep.
Like you made a mistake.
Yep.
And it's like all those great Super Bowl commercials that all of a sudden you're so expecting noise and then it hits quiet.
Yes.
And that's what it was.
Yep.
But what it was for me, it was fun to kind of see like, oh, that got you to pay attention.
Yes.
It cut through the noise.
Yes.
And there's going to be multiple hooks
yes.
that we're going to use to kind of cut through the noise and cut through the medium of it. But like, I think the question here for us is like saying, okay, what does it look like at some level also? Can we be hook oriented without being like so provoking? It's like a shock jock radio.
Yes.
Because I think that, when you hear, when you think of faith driven, I hope you think of quality.
Yes.
I hope you think of edgy reframing. That we're going to talk like, hey, we're not going to ignore the villain. We're going to look them square in the eye. We're going to tell them what we're up against. But can we do that in a way that's not shock jock? Because tragically, that's what's selling, right? It's personality centric and it's crazy profound things. What does it look like for a pendulum swing to say, okay, you can be bold, you can be specific, you can be daring, but you don't have to be, crazy.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, we've got to be true to ourselves and true to our calling. And I think that we have to continue to even hold ourselves accountable to that. And I think anybody that gets a microphone has to have accountability of you're actually steering off course a little bit, or they listen to the wrong, marketing advisor that tries to get them to be clickbaity. But I think what we're seeing even outside of just being true to who we are, and a leader being true to who they are, is I think the trends have actually shifted away from that. I think we're seeing a shift towards a desire for authenticity, where I think some of that stuff that was so shock factor-ish. Now there's still like, you can go on YouTube and you can see some thumbnails that are over the top, but I don't think you're seeing, I think you're seeing that a lot of trust wears quickly. And I think these algorithms are so much based off of trust and how much you continue to engage with that content or take action with those clicks. And so we all know when we've clicked an ad and we think we're gonna get one thing, we get another, just the annoyance of it. But I think even the way some of these technologies have progressed is preventing those same tactics from working the way they always have. But I think at the end of the day, you've got to, and I think you see it I think about a company like Chick-fil-A and how they have just been so true to their brand. Nothing. I mean, you got the cows. The cows are cute, kind of funny, but it's not shock, like it's just, it's witty. And I think there's ways.
But we all want to go sit on the couch. We want to sit on the couch. We see it in the commercials. Now we want to meet the cows too. They've created something.
They have.
And it's taken time to create that.
Yes. And I think, Coca-Cola is another brand that I think has never really leaned into the shock side of things, but they have a unique brand presence of, just like it's something you use to celebrate. And so I think as you just think about your brand and we think about our brand, I think we got to be true to who our brand is. And we don't need to pretend to be something else just to get clicks. Because I think at the end of the day, if we get clicks and we don't deliver, our reputation will be hurt. And I think, it takes years we know this in any relationship, in our marriages, it takes years to build trust.
Yeah.
And it takes a moment to break trust. And I think it's with our brands the exact same way. Is we can send out one bad email that is deceptive, and we have just broken trust like that. Or we put one video that isn't in line with who we are. But I think we're not going to establish trust with one video. We're going to establish trust with a series of videos and series of messages and continued community and engagement. But we have to continue to earn that trust. And the more we earn it, the deeper it gets. But I think that every brand, I think has to lean into that with their marketing efforts. And just for one quick click, it's never worth it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. We often talk about how content is a voice of strategy. Yeah. And I think that you can't just change that voice. Like, it's a consistency of that voice that develops that. I want to flip it a little bit. The entrepreneur that's listening or watching this podcast, and if you're listening to us, we're starting to do more video podcasts and drop those out here. So it's a fun new season for us to do these on video and highlight some of the stories and things while we're doing it. But I want you to hit specifically for an entrepreneur that's starting to get into social.
Yeah.
One of the things for me is like there's just a multitude of platforms.
Yes.
And one of the things that I heard somebody break down recently that I think a lot of us know, but it's just helpful to say is like, if you're a Main Street entrepreneur that is trying to reach people in your clear vicinity, there are platforms, whether it be Facebook. Well, actually those, TikTok is what I kind of go to is like, there might be some of those that might be more geographic.
Yes.
But then you see some of the tech-backed venture side of things that are saying, okay, now I need a LinkedIn presence.
Yeah.
But you don't see a lot of Main Street businesses saying like, man, I've got my LinkedIn profile and I'm posting there. Talk just a little bit, different size stage, what platforms typically are better fits for people.
Yeah, look, if you're B2B, LinkedIn is the platform. I think that any B2B business entrepreneur needs to be focused on. It is the best ROI that I have found out there in a B2B effort. I think as you go outside of B2B is where it gets a little grayer. And so I think it depends on your audience. I think about my mother-in-law, she spends probably 20 hours a day on Facebook, and my daughter.
It's a long time, 20 hours. Wow. She's winning some awards there.
I might be exaggerating, but I'm not sure based on the engagement I see online. I'm sorry, Nana, if you're watching this or listening to this, but my daughter, 14 years old, 15 years old. I'm sorry, Emery, but she's on Instagram a lot, and for a long time. And so different audiences have different engagements. My wife is more on TikTok.
Yeah.
And so I think it depends on who your audience is and how you want to reach them. I think about for our local business, a platform that a lot of people don't utilize or even know about is Nextdoor.
Yeah.
Nextdoor is an app for neighborhoods. And so if you're thinking hyper local, Nextdoor is a great platform to both do advertising on or organically engage with people right there in your area. And so I think there's a lot of different platforms, but I would say that right now, when I think about America in particular, so it depends on the region and area, but Instagram is probably the most universal platform. Facebook has more users, but Instagram has more average time on platform, and I see that as more valuable because it's more opportunity to engage that audience. So generally speaking, I would say Instagram is the opportunity. The other thing that I would add is what's happened with the TikTokification, I call it, of social media, is that short form vertical video is everywhere. So when I think about LinkedIn, they just added a video feature. I call it Link Talk because it's just like TikTok on LinkedIn. X just added the same feature. Facebook and Instagram have had it for a while with Reels, and YouTube has it with Shorts. And so you can actually, as a local business or as an entrepreneur, everyone can create short form vertical video and post it everywhere and see where you're getting the best engagement and the best ROI. You don't have to create something custom for LinkedIn and something custom for Facebook. That is ideal as you grow from a marketing perspective. But I think as you're starting out, sometimes you can just put a lot of things in a lot of places and see where you get traction. But you cannot invest everywhere with everything you've got. You've got to prioritize where to go. And so it's gray, and I think a lot depends. And so, that's where I'd start.
So one last hot take here. So it used to be social was a place where you meet people, but if you want to go deep, maybe it's on the website, maybe it's some other venue.
Yes.
How has that changed? Where not only do you meet people, but the whole customer journey at some level is on social for some brands.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think this is the emergence of the DMs, and so one of the things the Instagram CEO, two things, I'll give you two kind of hints of advice here from the Instagram CEO. One thing he just said, and Elon has already said this about X as well, is hashtags are dead. And so if anybody's curious about it, just put a hashtag on it. It's social media. Hashtags are dead, according to the CEO of X and the CEO of Instagram. And so, but I think he said that they analyzed all of their engagement and said they were assuming that their best engagement was on Reels. They weren't even paying attention to it so much. And they realized the number one feature used on Instagram right now is DMs. Number two is stories. And essentially what that tells us is, and they said what people are using the DMs for the most are sharing post to their friends and then consuming that. First thing somebody does when they open the Instagram app is check their DMs. And so what's happening for businesses is somebody is seeing their content, going to their profile and messaging that page, or using kind of an auto, DM feature and getting some engagement that way. And so people are moving conversations. And I think what we often want to do in any kind of business setting is move somebody from a public forum into a private conversation, because that's where real engagement is happening, where you can get somebody the exact answer they need, or answer their questions, or give them more information. And so much of it, and this is why it surprises me how many organizations I've worked with, when I'm like, what's your engagement like in the DMs? Like, we don't have time to check that. I'm like, you don't have time to check like people reaching out to you. Why are you even trying to reach people if you're not going to be responsive to them sending you
If
messages?
you're a faith-driven entrepreneur that's messaged us on LinkedIn and hasn't gotten a prompt response in the last couple of months, Nils is here to help with the team. So
you will be getting a response in 24 hours.
Yeah. but it's true is like we've been so infatuated with some levels of vanity metrics that we haven't recognized, like, the view is just it's just a channel we go through to get the deeper engagement. We've confused the destination and the method. And I think, again, I would say, as it has taken off, we've been slow to respond to it, into saying, okay, this engagement there is as much as X, Y, or Z. If we can serve it right and do it well. And it takes a lot to do that.
It does.
But we have to see the opportunity for what it is. So
if I could have a caveat
please,
to that,
please.
though, I think that I'm still, though, one of those believers that it's still rented property. We can be kicked off of, we don't own that Instagram account or that YouTube account. And if it gets taken out, there's no phone number for most of us to call. And so it is an incredible opportunity to reach new people. But I think we also have to know the algorithms can change at any point. The rules can change at any point. And so I still believe, from a marketing perspective, we need to get people to our website. We need to get people on our email list. We need to get them on a text list. So it's not an either or. It's just, I think what we're seeing from an overall online engagement perspective is more people are spending more time on social media, and there's more functionality within social media where we don't always have to drive them as a next step to our website. It might be a third step. Maybe first step is to DM us, and then we want to take you to email. And so I just wanted to lay out that caveat, because there always is risk when it comes to being dependent on one platform or even a diversity of social media.
I love that. If there's an entrepreneur out here listening to it and they're saying this is lease space, there's only so much TI or upgrades you're going to do to a lease space. But when you look at it and you're going to say, it's just different when you own it. And when you own that distribution to your customer, it's just a different ballgame. You can put more into it.
Exactly.
So I love that perspective. All right. So maybe this is a topic for another day.
Okay.
Well, let's surface it for anyways. When we talk about AI, is this the thing that breaks, like, every entrepreneur out there that hated social media before now hates it even more? Or does it make it more accessible? Does it make it more less authentic? What happens here?
I think, and I think this is a big conversation. What I'm finding, and I'm curious even what you're saying, Justin, but it is that social media added confusion for a lot of entrepreneurs and complexity to marketing, where AI is adding efficiency. And so I think there's actually a greater adoption that I'm experiencing and seeing with ChatGPT in particular, and other AI tools, as people are saying, oh, this is pretty useful pretty quickly. And you can understand, where social media and my only where I can relate is I kind of saw it right away with AOL Instant Messenger, and it made sense with MySpace and Facebook for me. It was when I saw Snapchat that my immediate response was, "This is stupid. Why does anybody need this app?"
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, teenagers seem to need it. They spend a lot of time on it.
So you're saying you still have AOL Instant Messenger? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I tried. They shut me down. So this rented property, and so it goes away. But it is. I think at the end of the day, there's efficiency created through AI.
Yeah.
That one can help you with social media. It can help you with all kinds of things in your organization and business. And so I think we're in a day where if you're not like with social media, there's a lot of organizations that blew it off for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, they were like, oh no, we better catch up. And I think AI, there's been a lesson learned with getting behind on technology. And the truth is the cost is just so low that we can begin to integrate it for no cost for the free ChatGPT or, other tools that are available. And so I think the accessibility of what can create efficiency pretty quickly is already available that any entrepreneur that's not, this is what I used to always say to people on social media is like, look, just get on and spend 5 minutes a day on social media. Even if you're not going to use it, just listen and pay attention. Just use ChatGPT for 5 minutes a day and ask it to teach you about itself and how you can use it in your business. And you'll be blown away by what it can do. And then ask it to give you advice about how you can use LinkedIn or which social media platform should you be on. And ChatGPT or Claude or, there's lots of great tools out there. Gemini is one of my favorites by Google. X is actually my favorite. So if you ever use Grok, I think it's actually probably the best AI LLM out there right now. But you can just ask it of which social media platform should I be investing in the most? What kind of content ideas can you give me? It's a great consultant to your business. So I think whether
it's a consultant that knows your business so eerily well.
Yes.
And to give perspective on just how well they know you.
Yes.
We have this Friday fun kind of prompt in Slack with our team. So we've got about 45 people on our team. We're all virtual. And so one of the ways that we stay connected, there's always a prompt. And one was ask ChatGPT, I can't remember the exact words, like to create a picture of
yourself.
Create a picture of yourself.
Office or workplace, something like that.
Yeah. And the amount of pictures that it came on from our team, it was one of the most fun prompts we've had in a long time because it was fascinating to see people's story in this image that had 10 different things going on. It was like a Where's Waldo picture kind of happening, and you could see everybody in their story.
Yes.
And to think that it knew it that well, it's, we've talked about this in a terrible way where algorithms can be bad.
Yep.
But I think that there's just this opportunity here to say there's an overwhelming amount of information. I remember when Google started and it was like, their advertising had to brag on, we've archived 25,000 pages or whatever, but more coming soon.
Yes.
Or no, 25 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it was like, we don't have enough data. And now we're at this place where there's so much data.
Yes.
We are paralyzed by it.
Yes.
We scroll just mind-numbingly through it that we need something to say, how do you make the complex accessible?
Yes.
And I think that's true in how entrepreneurs handle it and how we consume it.
Yes.
Otherwise, man, we're going to get lost. And so I love friends like Mark Sears. I love how you're engaging with this and others are just saying like, we can't run from this conversation. We got to push into it.
And I think we can't, as Christians, we cannot approach this with fear. And I think that's how we've approached the internet, to date, to where we shouldn't have a website because there's pornography on it. And at the end of the day, the technology is agnostic in nature. It's going to be used for good and it's going to be used for bad, or it can be used for good, but it's probably going to be used for bad. And so I think we've had opportunities to redeem that technology in a lot of good ways. It doesn't diminish the bad things that happen. Social media has ruined marriages. It's led to addiction. It's caused a lot of problems. It's also led to new marriages. It's led to beautiful, reconciling of relationships, great gospel opportunities. AI is going to be used for bad, but there's also incredible opportunities for us to develop our businesses and grow ourselves. I think the education opportunity on AI is going to be incredible and massive. And so there are lots of opportunities, but at the end of the day, we won't understand where it's good or bad if we don't learn about it.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a moment where we need to learn, and we probably all need to learn quickly, even if we're not integrating it. But I think as you learn about it, you'll quickly learn how it can add efficiency and effectiveness to the work you do.
Yeah. Well, I love your passion for it. It's thrilled to shields on this. I'm loving how the way that you're engaging our team just on ways that we can support the movement, how we can leverage these technologies and learn from it. And so, friends, as you're watching this, or if you're listening to the podcast, for one, again, join us on the video podcasting, as we're going to be doing more of that. But I would just invite you guys along with the journey. I hope that you sense, again, this is your movement. This is us all coming together and saying, how can we support what God is doing around the world? And with that, I would just invite you guys to say, how can we better serve you in these places, in these channels of conversation? What does that look like for us to better serve you? And what are some of the things that we should be trying? What are some of the things that you're finding traction in your business that might be a blessing to the movement if you shared it there? So as you have questions, as you have thoughts and ideas, you can reach out to us on the website. You can message Nils or I, and we would love to engage on this. I'm sure we'll do this again, just talking about some of these topics, because we know this is a really big issue and a big thing. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for the chance to serve you guys in this. We will see you next week on the podcast.